Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's AZO Network webinar, which is all about scientific purchasing and the channels that have an impact on today's buyers. Now, the content of this webinar is based on our recent survey of scientific purchasers, and aims to provide insight that will help you with your sales and marketing strategies. Before getting started, a quick recap on how to get the most out of the events today. We are recording everything, so you'll be able to watch back on demand within the next 24 hours. When you get this link, please consider sharing your top takeaway on social media or with a colleague who might also be interested in learning more about today's content. If you're having any technical difficulties, then a quick refresh is normally your best option, or you can use the chat box to communicate any issues and we'll get you back up and running as quickly as possible. We're going to be running 3 polls in the event today, and there are also a handful of resources available in the handout section, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. So please do check those out during the event today. We'll also be sharing the full market report with you towards the end of today's event. Now we have the event today is going to be a series of 3 mini presentations with Sarah, Frankie, and it was going to be Rebecca, but unfortunately she's been struck down with the flu, so I'll be filling in for her today. We're going to be sharing thoughts on the areas of research in which we've been doing recently. So we'll be doing 3 mini presentations, then followed by a live Q&A. So if you do have any questions at all that come to mind, please do drop those in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, or if you're watching this on demand, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We'll try to get to as many of these as possible within the hour, and any we don't answer, we'll follow up via email later on today or first thing in the morning. Okay, so that's enough from me. Frankie, over to you when you're ready. Whilst you're getting set up, I'm just going to start the first poll. We're just interested to know what area or what's going to be your main area of focus over the next quarter or the next 3 months. So some options on your screen now. If you could share your thoughts when you have a moment. And Frankie, I'll let you get set up and started on your presentation.
Thank you, Danny. One sec, let me just submit that. Plenty of options there, all of the above. Brilliant. So, yeah, I'm going to look at content creation strategy, and we're looking at tailoring your content to your audience. But we're looking first and foremost primarily at channel influence from the survey results. Now, your ultimate goal is to get people onto your website. Actually, maybe that's your penultimate goal, with leads and sales being the primary goals. However, 89% of respondents said that the manufacturer's website is the most important channel. So from a vendor perspective, this is your shop window. You spend a lot of time, effort, energy to make sure that your website is portraying your company in the best way possible. So how do prospects and customers find you? Whereas it used to be trade shows, word of mouth, trade magazines, face-to-face, etc., that's now been usurped by SERPs. So by SERPs, we mean search engine results pages. And that's overtaken the traditional channels, with 81% of respondents citing SEO, search engine optimization, as the influential channel. And that's with good reason. You just think about in your personal lives. We trust Google and other search engines are available. With our searches, we trust them more now than ever before. If you're in a foreign country or foreign town looking for somewhere to eat, looking to book a flight, if you're buying a car, Google is invariably the first place you go for information, for pictures, for reviews, to make sure that you are making the right decision to part with your hard-earned cash. And it's no different in the workplace either, whether you're purchasing software, antibodies, reagents, microscopes, high-value capital equipment. Your professional reputation's on the line. So you want to make sure that you are making the best possible decision and you are the most well-informed that you can be. So SEO and keyword research should be the pillar of any strategy, so that you are ranking for the right search terms, so you're there at that point of consideration. So as we move down, we're looking at online publications as the third one here. 60% of respondents said these had an influence on their purchasing decision. So you only have to look at ASOM, News Medical, or AZO Life Sciences. And these are effectively online versions of the aforementioned trade magazines. So they are the places that industry professionals, That's where they go to get their latest industry news, product information, etc. Moving down the graph, sales reps are still important. Whilst certain industries are operating completely using e-commerce, it's not always possible to achieve the sale without a salesperson. So particularly where there's a complex scientific, technical, or engineering requirement. So technical specialists are still incredibly valuable just to ensure that that solution does meet the buyer's needs. Now, typically this will come further down the funnel, so content has a lovely part to play in teeing up the sales or the technical specialist as well. So it's very important that sales and marketing are aligned so they can serve the customer with the best, most related content. So here at AZO, we've got dozens, if not hundreds, of sales and marketing pieces of collateral. So that's PDFs, webinars, videos, blog posts, podcasts. You can imagine that that's a bit of a nightmare to maintain and make sure that everybody knows where it is. So marketing's job, organization is key. Keeping it all up to date is a huge task in itself, and making sure that sales know what they need and have the right link to hand when they need it. That's a huge part of it. So all comes back to organization. And to combat that, we have not only the website with all the publicly facing information, all of the stuff that we're happy to make public, but also we've got a Google Doc and a link tree effectively of all the private, content calendars, of all of the sort of internal documentation and internal comms, so that you only really need one link, and that is the link tree. So yeah, that just emphasizing how important organization is when you've gone to all the trouble and time and effort of creating your content. Just make sure that it's being used and that everybody's got the best chance of finding what they need when they need it. Social media is also growing. It's a bit of a false friend there down on the right hand side, because anecdotally I've seen that it is growing far more influential than what these results would suggest. However, I view it as a channel to engage and capture the attention and ultimately bringing people to the website, as we'll see on the next slide. Sarah's going to discuss a bit more about social media later on. But you can see how the channels here match up with the top of the funnel. So that's how are we getting people into the funnel through these different channels, whether it's organic SEO, SERPs, display, referral sites, trade magazines, or online magazines, social media, etc. And Danny's going to touch upon a bit more of the detail on awareness, consideration, and decision-making content. But the reality here is that people can jump from the top of funnel to bottom of funnel and revisit your site after 30 days of inactivity, which can make attribution a bit more challenging. But I think the main purpose for having a funnel is that you've got a plan. So when you create a piece of content, it might be an idealized concept, the funnel, but whenever we create a piece of content, we think, right, this is a top of funnel piece. It's designed to generate a lot of traffic. Or we think this is a lead generation. It's designed to highlight the value proposition and really, capture lots of people's data. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, which shows, or it demonstrates, those roles perfectly. So here we've actually taken data from the AZO network, and we can see that we've split between articles and product profiles. Articles typically top of funnel, product profiles bottom of funnel. They're basically selling the advantages, features, advantages, and benefits of the products. Articles drive far more traffic. They have around 12.5 million page views, whereas product profiles have had 800,000 page views. Whereas articles will have a conversion rate, an overall conversion rate of around 0.48%, which might seem low, but it's not. They're not a lead generator. They are a traffic driver. When you combine them with a product profile or with a bottom of funnel piece of content, that's when you start to reap the rewards, especially when you've planned it out properly. In contrast, product profiles convert at 9.44%. So of the 800,000, 800,000 page views that we have, getting on for 10% of those convert as sales qualified leads. So that's a huge statistic and a great conversion stat. We spend a lot of time, effort, and energy optimizing our pages and making sure that the right information is available at the buyer's fingertips during that moment of purchase, and it's reflected there in that stat. So yeah, again, just to reinforce, despite product profiles only having 6.24% of page views, they account for 84% of sales qualified leads and 56% of all leads. That's including marketing qualified. So it's a bit like, I'm sure we're all familiar with Pareto's law. It says that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. This is give or take a few percent here and there. Pareto's law applies in many things: sales, marketing, organizational effectiveness, operational efficiency. Is that 80% of the results are driven by 20% or a small percentage of the inputs. So here, taking SQLs in isolation, you can see that just how powerful product profiles are at converting that traffic. Whereas articles are a great traffic driver. So if we were to look at the success of articles, we'd be using a slightly different metric on page views or user interaction in terms of how engaged they are. So this is really strong evidence to back up how important it is to strategically analyze your content using CRO or an A/B test, which leads us on to the first poll, Danny. I think if you can launch that. It's how many people are actually doing some form of A/B testing or conversion rate optimization. There's a nice little anecdote from our own personal experience. Even just something as simple as tweaking the color of a button just to make it stand out a bit more, or tweaking the text. We use software that allows us to put a hypothesis forward and actually test it with thousands of page views and see what actually has a statistically significant effect on increasing the traffic number, increasing conversion numbers. So it'd be interesting to see, Danny, have we got the results on that poll before we hand over?
Yeah, coming in now. So 28% yes, 44% no, about a third of people thinking about it as well. Just say if people are interested in it, we touched on this quite a lot on a previous webinar with Seb. He went into all the details of how you would implement a CRO strategy and how to actually do it. So if it is something you're interested in, then just check out the handouts. You can find links to all the previous webinars. Yeah,
and just to finish that off, the long and short of it is we had a 9 times, so that's an 800% increase or 900% increase in our conversions just from a few simple tweaks to our website, which was all thanks to our web services, specifically Seb that did it for us. But I'd recommend you speaking to Seb if anyone's not sure as to the design of their website.
Yeah, there's a good point coming from Sue. She's asked, or she's basically said that their website is driven by a global team, so they can't run A/B tests unless it's a regional program. That's a good point. That's obviously be a challenge for different people. I'll just say on that, the A/B testing can be run on lots of different areas. So it could be as simple as your first line of your email, it could be how you present social posts. I mean, you can A/B test lots and lots of different things. So appreciate that's a particular challenge, but definitely not something definitely still something you can try in other areas. Any other thoughts on that, Frankie?
Yeah, I mean, the software we use, Google Optimize, is you put that on the front end, and it's actually quite user friendly. I know Seb was able to just put it on the front of ours, and you can change buttons, change colors, tweet text, that kind of thing. So yeah, if you're doing it on a regional program, if you've got a regional website, we run loads of A/B testing in regional programs. Very good. Thanks, Sue. Yeah, if you do have a regional version of your site, there's no reason you couldn't do it on there, which I think you do by the looks of things.
Perfect. Thank you, Frankie. So as I mentioned in the intro, Rebecca has unfortunately been struck down with the flu today. So although you'll see her picture on all these slides, I can assure you that's not myself. But I'm going to be presenting some of her insights and sharing her research with you. So primarily, I'm going to be talking about how you can make sure you and your marketing teams can hit the mark with relevant content and excellent customer service. So our findings have highlighted that across all survey responses, customers find these 2 points, relevant content and responsive customer service, as vital when they're considering sticking with their current vendors. So how do you ensure that your customer is seeing the right content when they're on your website, when they're visiting your website? So web design is obviously an important factor. And as we're going to see when Sarah presents, that is the same across all the different age categories. So we've actually broken this research down into different age categories, and Sarah's going to touch on that a little bit after I'm finished speaking here. But they've all found that the manufacturer's website useful when making a purchasing decision. This means that as marketers, we need to ensure that our websites are easy to navigate when a customer is searching for a specific solution. And one easy fix or one easy tip that you can do, you can see on the left-hand side of your screen here, is having a search bar that links to the keywords on your site. And then the other thing that we highly recommend is having a really well thought out internal linking strategy. So when a customer lands on a relevant interview or a white paper, how easy is it for them to navigate to further content supporting the product or offering what is being discussed, and not just offering a link to maybe something that's a bit random compared to what they've just been engaging with. So adding relevant links on your pages allows your customer to easily navigate to further content such as video testimonials, your product pages, other relevant blog posts supporting the content that they've landed on or they've initially found on Google. And then why do we do this? We'll consider your own buying behavior or your own behavior when you're on any website. If the next bit of content is readily available and valuable, then chances are you're going to move on to that. Whereas if the next bit of content is irrelevant, then you'll probably look elsewhere for your information. So accessible and clear next steps will allow you to engage and educate your potential buyers more easily. As you can see again on this example here, this is a thought leadership piece. And on the right-hand side, you've got other relevant content that's easy to navigate, easy to find, and is relevant to what's just been consumed as the main piece. A further thing to consider is what content is relevant to where your customer sits in their buying journey. So we split content into 3 categories, and we recommend that marketers do something similar. These are awareness, consideration, and decision-making pieces. Awareness content will be your sort of broadest content, intending to attract customers and gain brand awareness. For example, the thought leadership article that we showed on the previous slide. Consideration content will help you segment potential customers from your wider audience. So including multiple calls to action will help you capture the data of interested parties, for example, in a webinar or some other sort of consideration piece. And then decision-making content is meant for your prospective buyers. So they know that your products can benefit them, but they still need that final push to make a purchasing decision, or to make that final push to reach out to your sales team, for example. And the content that helps do this the best is video testimonials. Then on your website, you can easily separate these content types by linking awareness content to further awareness and consideration pieces, your consideration content with other consideration content and decision-making content, and so on and so on. So you keep the audience moving within your virtual sales funnel. And like we said on the previous slide, accessible and clear next steps will allow you to engage and educate your potential buyers without the need for any human impact other than to create the content and set up the internal linking strategy. Once you've got that set up, a great way to test if your site is performing for your customers is to integrate a CRO, conversion rate optimization strategy that Frankie was briefly talking about just before. The beauty of this is you can test different ways that content is consumed, what draws people to what sort of things, what are the best headlines, calls to actions, the wording of your copy, and you can see what's having the best and most positive effect in terms of content consumption and generating leads. Then outside of your website, how do your customers engage with other relevant content? So we would recommend choosing your most engaging and informative content pieces, such as your articles, white papers, and interviews, and hosting them on relevant second or third-party sites, such as the ASO Network suites. Doing this can help you to reach a much broader audience of people who are already engaged with your field. They already trust that site and are already regular visitors. So they want to learn more about relevant solutions that you can provide. So by doing this, you get your content in front of an engaged audience that are hungry for the latest information. This graph you can see on the screen now, as well as all the other graphs that we're presenting today, are available in the ebook, which we're going to be sharing shortly with everyone. And then the second thing that I touched on at the beginning was customer service and giving excellent customer service. So one thing you can do is ask for feedback from your customers using software such as SurveyMonkey, Typeform, MailChimp. There's loads of different tech out there that can help you with this, all of which usually connect directly with your CRMs. And you can see firsthand what your customers think directly. So you can gain a lot more insight from existing customers about your service levels, what content they have found useful from the company, what they liked, what they didn't like about their customer journeys, and what potential customers might be looking for. So you're using the insights from your current customer base to help you attract and engage and streamline the buying journey for potential new customers. We'll talk a bit more about this during the Q&A. So if you've got any other questions about any of these that I've just presented, then please do share your thoughts. But I would say thank you for listening to my research, but this has all been Rebecca's work. So thank you for listening. And I'm going to pass over to Sarah now, who is going to talk to us a little bit more.
Thank you, Danny/Rebecca. I'm Sarah, and I'm a graphic designer and social media coordinator here at AZO. And it is for the social media part of my role that I developed an interest in how people interact with digital content. So we're still at that age where all the generations have coexisted with the digital world and the internet long enough to develop familiarity with the technology. But however, there's still a big contrast between them and the so-called digital natives. So Mark Prinsky said in 2001 that those born after the 80s who grew up surrounded by technology have inherently different brains than those that have had to adapt to the internet. Although I don't entirely agree with the distinction between digital natives and digital immigrants, it is true that different generations interact with digital content in different ways. And we can see it even in our very targeted scientific purchasing sample. So I'm roughly splitting the data from a survey into generations. And these are my findings from the results. Feel free to use the chat tool to let me know your thoughts. So we're starting with baby boomers. Baby boomers are the oldest cohort that we've sampled, and around 33% of our respondents were 55 years old or above. And the difference between them and younger generations is quite remarkable. They have the highest percentage of respondents that prefer to carry out their purchases by engaging with a sales representative. We've seen this trend decreases the younger the subjects are. Baby boomers are more likely to be in leadership positions, making them more likely to be key influencers on the purchasing or even carrying it out directly. So if baby boomers are within your target audience, make sure to offer plenty of relevant information on your product pages and ensure you communicate your product specs clearly and directly. Boomers are most influenced, as we can see here, by product information and application notes, which makes me think their experience in the industry leads them to prefer to make their own decisions with just the factual data. They're also more prone to ask questions and interact with the vendor, as they prefer face-to-face communication. However, most of the generations, especially in the scientific industry, have a significant amount of experience with the digital world. So I think it would be an error to just focus on offline marketing. Next, we have Generation X. And we've seen all of our Gen X respondents are influenced by product information and the manufacturer's website. Interesting to see that they choose the manufacturer for their purchasing research instead of the distributors. And they're the generation most influenced by video and webinars, around 25% more than other generations. So marketing to this cohort should focus on SEO, ensuring that your product pages offer relevant content, and also complementing this strategy with thought leadership, virtual events and video. Think product videos, social media snippets, interviews, application-focused webinars, etc. Offline marketing influence has decreased compared to baby boomers and will continue to fall when we look at millennials. Also, Generation X is really familiar with the digital world, and they prefer to carry out their research and purchases on their own rather than involving a sales representative early in the stage. And Lastly, millennials. Millennials have spent the majority of life surrounded by technology. My first memory of using a personal computer was 20 years ago when I was 9. I would technically be considered a digital native just because the internet existed when I was born, but I believe digital expertise doesn't come just by exposure, but by personal use. That said, we are the generation that uses social media the most, especially Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. Also, offline marketing influence has decreased the most in this age group, being 39% less influenced by trade shows and 31% less influenced by print publications. And also following the trend, they prefer to carry out the research and purchases online and independently. Content influence is similar to Generation X, but webinars have a stronger influence on millennials than emails, blogs, or interviews, putting it on the same level as white papers. In terms of marketing to this age group, the strategy is similar to Generation X, but I would add some focus on the social media aspect. Social media influence remains relatively low at 29%, but the use of social media remains high. No matter the age, 90% of our respondents of all generations are using at least one social media platform regularly. And fun fact for context, I read on Forbes the other day that 3 times more video is now consumed on TikTok than on Netflix, and that is the total amount of time, not the number of videos. It's really interesting to see how video habits have shifted in the last few years. And now my key points, starting with SEO. And as Frankie has mentioned in his presentation, having a solid SEO strategy in place is vital to be found. Everyone nowadays, regardless of age, is now very familiar with search engines and has expertise in navigating websites to find just the information that they need. In an increasingly competitive market where customers don't do most of the research online, as we've seen, you have to make sure that you are visible and stand out as the best solution to the problem, at least one of them. And that is the best advice I can get you from this presentation, but I still have a couple more. Next, I see an untapped opportunity on social media, and I've said this on almost every webinar I've been in. But if there's an audience using social media daily, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube are the most used platforms overall, by the way. If we have that audience there, but we see influence is low, to me, that suggests maybe a lack of presence of scientific brands on social media, or maybe poorly targeted advertising or failure in messaging. There's no magic formula that will guarantee that you get it right. It's just a matter of trial and error. Over the last 12 months, we have seen great results compared to previous campaigns with lower budgets or where we didn't have the luxury of trying a few different things and seeing what worked. And that has gone fantastically. And last but not least, we have seen a trend where younger generations prefer not to contact a sales rep at all and carry out their purchases alone. Having to submit an RFQ just to continue the purchase or to find out the price is seen as a pain point in the customer journey. And in fact, some people surveyed went through the trouble of writing down in the text box just how annoying they found having to contact the vendor just to get the pricing. And this is especially true for purchases under 5K. So consider removing this barrier to ensure a bigger portion of your leads that will get in contact when they're ready to buy or just really close to that stage. And you will see your conversion rates grow, and your sales representative will have more time to educate and help prospects that are ready to engage with them. And that's all for me. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Frankie, as well. We're now going to move into the Q&A part of the webinar. We've got a series of questions that came in during the registration, and also we'll answer any questions that come in live today. So if you do have a question you want asking, then just drop it into the Q&A tab and we'll try to get to it in the next sort of 25 minutes or so. So picking up on what we were talking about, this question is about top of funnel, and specifically, how do you prove the ROI on top of funnel activities? Frankie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it probably goes back to the slides we were looking at before. Your top of funnel activities would have a different measure of success, or KPI, if you like, as to what denotes success. Whereas your bottom of the funnel, you're probably looking at your lead generation, like that 9.84%, I think it was, that we had for product profiles. That's how much traffic they convert. They convert at nearly 10%. Whereas for top of funnel, it's a bit different. I suppose you could assign a value to each page view. It could be 1 cent, 1 penny, €1, or 1 cent even. But it's you're not judging that on the leads generated, because the leads generated was about 0.46% from 12 million page views that we had. I suppose it probably helps if you take the whole thing in its entirety. So we often ask clients, what is a typical or average order value? And if you're talking in sort of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, then it's easy to work back from that point. If you've got 10,000 page views and you convert at 10%, you got 10,000 page views on an article and you get 10% of those to your product page or your value proposition page. You've got 1,000 people. So you've gone from 10,000 to 1,000. You go from 10% of that for the conversion. You go from 1,000 down to 100 leads generated. And then say you have a 10% conversion rate for your leads to sales, you're looking at 100 down to 10. So if you've got 10 sales and you're selling equipment that costs $50,000, then you're looking at $500,000 in sales, which you can start to work it out from using those numbers.
Yeah. Good questions come in from Will, is asking about thoughts on the data varied by product value. For example, things that cost a few $100s compared to things that might cost $1 million. So, Will, today we've decided to present on a few of the key points of the research. There was so much to go through that if we tried to present it all, it wouldn't have been possible. But we do go into this in much more detail in the market report, which we'll be sharing shortly. So you can check that out and you'll find answers to that question there.
Typically, I think the sales cycles are a lot shorter for things under 5K, was it, Sarah? And then anything over 5K, you've got longer sales cycles, more decision makers. That's the trend that we were seeing. But Danny says we'll be sharing that in the report.
Yeah. We had another question about getting more engagement from, or sort of our best tips for getting more engagement from potential buyers. Sarah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. First, you have offer as much type of content as you can. As we mentioned, trying doing some A/B testing and see what works or what doesn't. The service is great starting point just to see what your target demographics might think or might notice more on your website. But you also have to put yourself in the shoes of your buyer persona and try and see how they would see the website, because I know it's hard to see the website that you've worked and you see every day and you know where everything is from the points of a third person that will come and it's new to that website. So I always advocate for a customer-centric marketing. So try and get in touch with a few of your customers, like Danny has pointed out. Ask for feedback. What is the first thing they've noticed? Try and offer plenty of links, and you can see on Google Analytics or any other metric software where your customers are going from the website. Maybe they're not going to conversion pages because they're not readily available. They're not easy to find. You have to try and wipe your brain and come to your homepage with a new mentality and see where would I go from here, and that's where you start seeing what you can offer to generate more engagement.
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions that we asked you guys. You've been with the business like 1 and 2 years respectively now, but it's that fresh pair of eyes. People say you can't see the wood for the trees, but it's always a good question to ask new recruits or ask people that you're interviewing. Especially if we're all working in marketing departments here. It's what do you view from the website? Any changes that you'd suggest? That kind of thing always helps.
Yeah, you can also test it on customers as well. So you can jump on a Teams call, to get them to share their screen, just to watch how they navigate around your website. Probably be different to how you as a marketer navigate it. So yeah, there's lots of different things you can do, but it's a really important point, I think.
And hotspot software as well. We've used that in the past, where you can basically track mouse movements and what gets clicked on. Again, it all comes, it ties into A/B testing as well. You can hypothesize what works, but that actually gives you hardcore data, and you can see how people are behaving in real time.
Yeah, there was another question about managing their own bandwidth, and I think this is a good point. We're talking about how you can test all these different things and stuff like that. But how can and should teams prioritize, Frankie?
Well, we've grown from, it was just me a couple of years ago to now there's 4 or 5 of us in the team. For me, it's the project management software that's been really helpful, because you're able to see, what work have we got on the books, how much time is it going to take, who's doing what, who's got ownership, who's got who's ownership and transparency as well. So you can see exactly who's looking like they're overloaded this week. Oh, Rebecca, can you help Sarah with that, etc. So that's well, we use Trello, but I know Asana's pretty good as well at that sort of stuff. And there's loads of different project management tools out there. I think Monday.com hits me on a daily basis with the adverts as well. So they know that I'm in the market.
Yeah, there's another question about learning more about your customers' buying habits. So this is a little bit of what I was touching on, or what Rebecca was touching on before. You can run your surveys, so using the software that's available out there to ask questions. You can either do this by having a set amount of questions, so you can compare your data in that way, or you can have open access question boxes where you can just, maybe it's easier on fewer people, so you can get more insight into what people are thinking. The other thing you can do is you can get insights from your sales team or your customer facing teams, or you can jump on sales calls, discovery calls, etc., as a marketer, and then find out firsthand what are your customers' pain points, what are their buying habits, etc. So a combination of data and then real life insight, I think works well. Any other thoughts on that one, guys?
I'd say don't be afraid to ask for the negatives, like some things like unsubscribing reason, because people are more willing to provide feedback when it's negative, and that way at least it will give you the chance to remove something that might be a potential pain point or barrier on the website just straight away. So that is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to get probably some of the better insights from people complaining about stuff, although you've got to take heavy complaints the same way you take really positive outcomes. So it's never as good as you think, it's never as bad as you think. So somewhere in the middle is going to give you the right sort of thing.
People with strong sentiments either way will be more likely to comment. Yeah, it's like what you see on social media, isn't it? Yeah. People polarized by just any issue.
This question is about, so they're asked about how you develop a culture of customer-centric marketing. So I think this came in from a company that's a sort of big multinational company, and they'll have an existing sort of culture, and they're looking at how they can create a more customer-centric marketing culture across the board. So obviously, marketing is just one part of the puzzle. Frankie, what do you think about that?
It's becoming more and more necessary, whereas in the past it maybe wasn't. The customer was important, but now it's becoming absolutely the be all and end all. I think it's kind of come from the Amazon playbook as well. I know Jeff Bezos used to put an empty seat at the end of every table in every meeting. I say that like I was in there. He used to do that to represent the customer, and that would be because the customer is important. Whether it's marketing, you're probably the first. Marketing is the first touch point that a customer has with your business, and then it's sales, and then it's probably finance after that. So even through to finance, operations, and customer service, all of those parts can play a role in this, in making the customer the champion, basically. So if no one likes ringing up customer services, take your bank or your insurance company or whatever it is, if you're ringing up someone like that, you want it to be a slick process from the moment you pick up the phone. You want to make sure that you're speaking to someone within 10 seconds, but that unfortunately isn't the reality in a lot of instances. You want to make sure that they've got your data, your up-to-date data. So they should be using a CRM. They should be using a CRM with all of your case files and everything, all the relevant information that they need for you. But you see this, it's quite simple to say it, but it's hard to do and execute well. But yeah, from marketing to sales to finance to operations to customer service, even to sort of offboarding customers, like how do you do that well? Like and then that I suppose if you do that well, it gives you a reason to call them back in a year's time or so, or 6 months time, and ask, what could we do better? And I'm sure most people, if you ask that in the right way, would happily lend that information to you. Well, apart from, I suppose that's how people throughout the business can obsess over a customer, but it all comes back down to segmentation, firmographic segmentation. So what kind of company do they work for? What kind of size? What kind of industry? And then you can start to segment them on a personal level as well. How old are they? What's their sort of digital literacy like? Where do they live? What stage of life are they at? And it enables you to build up a picture of the customer. That's from a marketing sense, but I suppose from a broader sense, it runs right through your company.
Yeah, it's one of the main overarching themes of the research is that buyers today expect a completely streamlined process, be that if they're doing their research online or when they actually become, when they start talking to you or when they're actually a customer themselves, they expect the whole process to be effective, streamlined for them to be able to get the answers they need in a quick manner. So having some of the things that we've spoken about today is why we've talked about them, because it's so important for ensuring that prospect chooses your company over one of your competitors.
Yeah, nowadays I found myself expecting every purchasing experience will be like Amazon, and I will be able just to swipe a button and it's going to come up in my house the day after. It can't always work like that, but you can, as Frankie was mentioning, marketing is the first point of contact for the vendors. Ask marketing what ideas they have, what they suggest, and now you have the software like CRO, A/B testing. You have the software to try out different new ideas, because assuming that they were coming from a company where it's big, it's multinational, we don't know how to start to shift towards a customer-centric marketing. You need the hard data to back it up, and it can be something as silly as, well, we like in the CTA button that it says speak to an expert because we're experts, but then you can come back to the data and say, well, people actually are clicking more than talk to us because for various reasons we can seem closer, it can seem not as as daunting, and you can come with that data and start changing a few people's point of views and start making that bigger change.
Yeah, so one of the points you talked about in your presentation was about pricing and having sort of easy to access pricing and just removing that sort of tension point. It's not, people often say it's not always possible because the pricing might be very complex. Your pricing structure might be very complex. Your products might be hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't want to put off potential buyers, but I think more and more it's going to become much easier for vendors to access pricing, because if you're not doing it, one of your competitors might, and then all of a sudden they've already got the information they need without having to spoken to you about your pricing. So I think it's an interesting one, and one we'll probably talk about more in the future. I know we're having internal conversations about it at the moment, but allowing as much of that buyer journey to be done on someone's own terms and before reaching out seems to be the trend that's becoming more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me all right still?
Yeah.
It's raining heavily on my head.
Oh, right.
Just on that, it's the first thing I do whenever I go, if I'm looking at new software for something. It's can you hear that? That's quite loud.
It's quite relaxing. Keep talking.
Good. We'll go with it. It's the first thing I do. I look for a rate card. Look for pricing. Look for an explainer video. Especially if it's like a complex software, you're looking to distill a complex topic into a 90-second video so you can understand it like that. But again, when it comes to pricing, I think you got to use if you're buying a Mercedes or you're buying a Range Rover or you're buying a luxury car, let's say, you want an indicative price so that you've got a rough ballpark figure as to what the budget is. Mercedes might advertise at £40,000 or dollars or whatever, but that's not necessarily going to be the finished price for the exact make and model that you're getting. And it's the same when we're coming to buying high value capital equipment same when we're buying software. You want to know what the ballpark figure is so that you can start to have a rough idea for the budget, so that when you're having discussions in your executive, your management meetings, that you're not a million miles away with that budgeting price.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're going to take a few more questions, but before we do, there's just one final poll. If you are interested in having a digital marketing health check, where we'll basically go through your website and give you some tips on how it can be enhanced, then just click yes on that poll there, and one of us or one of the team here will reach out. A few more questions, guys. We've spoken a lot about the buying journey and how we move people through that journey. What about managing the leads? Frankie, are we doing this automated? What's the best process for this? Again, it's going to depend varying on the size of companies and teams.
So just repeat the question.
So just about lead management. What are your tips for the best ways of managing those leads?
So yeah, I'd say, well, we generate. We're doing thousands of leads personally a year. So I'd say have a lead scoring system in place. So that's, we score our leads based on two overall factors: characteristics and behavior. So if it's a US marketing manager who said, I want to buy some email marketing, or I'm interested in reaching a genomics audience, then that tends to jump up quite high. Characteristics are US marketing director. These things are all sort of add to the score. We add sort of a point per page view, 10 points for an MQL or an ebook download, and 40 points for for like an SQL or like a genuine commercial action or signal of intent. If it gets over 90, then that kind of then goes to our business development or key accounts teams. I'd say put in place the software. We've got software that can do this for us. We've got it all programmed into Salesforce, so we've automated all that. It used to actually just be me. I'd have to see every lead that came in and then basically choose who that's going to. It was quite a stressful thing, as you can imagine, if you're getting dozens of those a day. It was one of the best moments of my life when we managed to automate that, and I was able to step away from the whole process. It was brilliant. But yeah, and apart from anything, if I was away or on holiday, or if I was in a meeting, leads would just be sat there. So they'd be sat there not getting answered. But in this instance now, we can respond to them or they get distributed within minutes, and they can be responded to within 15, 20 minutes or so. So that's a really positive, a positive step to take as well. Because if you make an inquiry as a customer, you want someone to acknowledge your inquiry and come back to you as soon as possible. So that's a huge thing in terms of like the service level agreement as well. So make sure you put a service level agreement in between sales and marketing as well. So marketing are generating sales qualified leads. You want to know that there's a mechanism in place to double or to check or to check that it's been received. So when was it received and what was the follow-up action? These are the kind of things that you can put in on a big picture report in your CRM. So that's what I'd say for that.
And if there wasn't any automation in place, when should the sales team be getting involved if you were doing it sort of person to person?
If there's no automation, well, then you've probably got a person in there, haven't you? So that they've got you've probably got a good feel for what makes a good lead, and then it's how when you automate it, or if you're fortunate enough to automate it, it's how you then translate what's the experience in your experienced sales managers, your marketing managers, people who've been in the business a long time. They'll be able to look at a lead and go, yep, that's good because it's from this territory and it's in this industry, and they've said X, Y, Z. So the sooner you can translate that into a bit of code, the better, because then it removes yourself from the process.
Yeah. There's another question here about launching a new product and what would be the best marketing strategy. Use all the marketing channels, so email, social, webinars, ads on third-party sites, etc., simultaneously, or should they go for a staggered approach? I guess that's going to depend on a couple of things. It's going to depend on the size of your company, the resources you've got, and also if you have an existing audience of which to promote the new products to. If you're a small company and you don't have an audience, then you would want to find somewhere that has that audience. So that's where Asia Network and other companies come into play. But your question specifically about should it be simultaneously or should it be one by one? I would say you want to have content available that can capture people whatever stage of their buying journey they're in. So if we take the three of us, one of us might be ready to buy tomorrow a product that you're selling. Sarah might just be she might be comparing you to other companies, and Frankie might just be finding out about you. You want to have content that can satisfy each of those needs at any time, so that any prospect can come to your site, come to your content, and be able to convert if and when they're ready. Any other thoughts on that?
I'd say different channels works for different stages of the funnel, because I'd say social media would be your first point of call, just to generate the brand awareness and just generate the attention and the word of mouth. And then in your social media channels and the social media paid campaigns, you can see which content has worked, where have they clicked, which different landing pages have generated the most leads or the most engagement, and then you can double down on that things and that type of content that works.
Absolutely, yeah. The brand awareness is huge, especially if you're a smaller or mid-sized company where people might not have heard you. You don't have the same awareness as the sort of multinationals. Then, social media, it plays a huge role in that, in terms of making sure that people are familiar with you. We actually do it ahead of our trade shows. So we started going back to trade shows, Analytica, which we're headed to at the end of this month, and Advanced Materials as well. So we're running brand awareness campaigns at those shows, so that by the time we get there to have the conversations, the exhibitors will know who we are, and they'll know that we specialize in marketing for science companies. We've got 100 different super specific, industry specific audiences, and all of our messaging is portrayed in the brand awareness. So that come end of June, they know exactly who we are and what we do.
Yeah, perfect. We've got a couple more questions just before we go to them. The market report should be appearing on your screen now. If you click on that call to action, you'll be able to grab your copy. And do let us know what you think. You can reach us at marketing@azonetwork.com if you have any feedback on the market report or any additional questions about any of the findings. So please do check that out and let us know what you think. Question here from Jim. He's asking, we're planning to launch a completely new website and e-com system. How would you recommend promoting its launch? Frankie, any thoughts on that? Then Sarah, and then Jim, I'll share some ideas.
We're planning to launch a completely new website and e-commerce system. How would you recommend promoting its launch? I'm just trying to think where Jim's from. I recognise your name, Jim. Well, I'd say first and foremost, brand awareness. You want to be increasing people's awareness that you've got a new site. What are the benefits of visiting your new site? What are the key features? And maybe sort of distill that. You might have a search tool or something that helps people find exactly what they need. We were quite pleased with the editor. We've got an interactive editorial calendar as part of one of our new parts of the site, which basically means that people can book newsletters and they can view real time availability of specific newsletters. You can imagine like dealing with 100 subject specific newsletters across multiple editions. I think we do about 980 editions across the year. It becomes a bit of an organizational challenge. I won't say nightmare, but it was a challenge. But now we've come out on the front foot with it, and basically brought all of that information, brought this calendar tool that allows people to check on availability at the front end. So our customers can do it without the need of having to ask for dates, and then we go back through a clunky email chain. So I'd say that's a new feature that we've been hammering recently. If there's any new features like that, I'd say get on to find out where your customers live on social media, and complement that with a multi-channel approach through email marketing, social, through third-party sites, through face-to-face, through trade shows. Just make sure that everybody's on message and people have the right information. Your email signatures, from your custom from your salespeople. How many emails do we send as a sales team on an annual basis? We're probably looking at tens of thousands. So if you've got the highlight of your new website and your new features of the website in your in your email signature, and that's across everybody, then that's real estate that you can own.
I'd say, because they're also launching a completely new e-com system. Get on your explainer videos, distributed all across social media and across other websites, any other audience or any other platforms like Azo Network, like you can do. Explain what are the benefits of the new website, what are the unique selling points that website has, how much faster are they going to find what they're going to need, find what makes your website better to what you previously had, and this e-com system, and explain it, and shout out, and as you say, Frankie, multi-channels everywhere.
Yeah. I'd say, Jim, if the good place to say, so why did you do it in the first place? I'm presuming you did it to make the buyer's journey more easily, but when you're doing your press releases, your emails, your social campaign, just beware. You see a lot of companies when they launch a new website, they announce the launch of their new website, but it's all about them being happy that they've got a new website, whereas you haven't done it for yourself, you've done it for your customers. So if you've launched an e-commerce site, then you've made it easier for your customers to buy from you. So explainer videos, like Sarah said, you can even jump on video calls with your existing customers to run demos on how to go through that process. If it's sort of the sort of company that you repeatedly sell products to, or use one main product, but then you need other things as you go through the life cycle, then again, explain those in your videos and just make it really easy for people to understand. But yeah, like Frankie and Sarah said, lots of good ideas there for how you can share that.
Just to double down on Sarah's idea, love the animation idea. Like it distills, how does the new e-commerce site work? Bang, you can basically address that in even a 30-second animated video. You could do that really, really well.
And you can embed it on your website once it's done. You can reshare on social media. By the way, have you noticed we've changed this? You're going to keep reusing it for a good while.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good place to finish things up. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you to everyone who joined us today and for participating in the webinar. Just before you finish, just draw your attention again to the handout section, where you can find lots of additional resources, including media kits, webinars, podcasts, editorial calendars, and that market report is available by clicking the call to action that should be on your bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Frankie touched on it. We're going to be at Advanced Materials in Birmingham in a couple of weeks, and Analytica in Munich at the end of the month. So if you are going to those events, please do come and visit the booth and have a chat with us about your digital marketing. If you need help with reaching new audiences, with any aspects of content within your buyers' journeys, then please do reach out, and we'll be able to give you a helping hand. Any other final points, Frankie, Sarah, before we wrap it up?
All good from me.
Yeah, same. If you have any other questions about the report, just, as Danny said, just don't hesitate to get in contact.
Yeah, so you can find us all on LinkedIn, or you can directly get to us at marketing@azonetwork.com. Do share your feedback and your thoughts on that report. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your days, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
There you go.